Hey everybody, what's up and welcome to another segment of Blind Date. On today's episode, I'm talking to Rob Hanley, who's been my coach for almost the past year and I attribute a lot of my business growth, huge business growth last year to working with him. So in this conversation, we're talking about how we got to work together, some of the techniques that we're using when working together and how he's helping me grow my business, and also some tips for designers and freelancers in general into how to run better businesses. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, had lots and lots of value. Enjoy. Hey Rob, what's up? And welcome to my new podcast. What's up, man?
Awesome, man.
Yeah, it's like we're just starting to, it's just like we're starting a conversation, even though we just ended like a 1 hour coaching call right now.
But no one needs to know that. We need to make this feel live and fresh and bring everyone into our world.
Awesome. So listen, so my new podcast and segment on this YouTube channel is called Design Blind Date, because usually it's like me talking to people that I never met before. And I think like the story of how I reached out to you is kind of like a blind date type of thing, because I had no clue who you are. And we kind of started dating and it worked out really well. So I want to kind of, yeah. So, and then I want to hear about your specific story, because you were a designer with a design background, turned out to be a business owner and business coach, and were really, I think, instrumental in helping me grow as a business owner. So we'll cover a lot of that. So let me just give a little bit of context to the people, like how I found out you. I found out about you on Instagram, and like really in a kind of a weird way of following other people. So like I have a friend called Jonathan Courtney, who is also on this podcast, who's a design agency owner, and he recommend that people follow Iman, who is like a marketing type of thing. And Iman went to a mastermind by Craig Ballantyne, who I started following, and then Craig Ballantyne recommended following you on Instagram, and I started following you on Instagram. And you had really, I think, unique type of stories that you do on Instagram, where you kind of teach people or give business advice kind of in a really, really special way. And that really appealed to me because it was really like smart and insightful, and like the references to books and like psychological studies and all of that type of stuff. So I kind of reached out to you on a DM, or like, hey dude, can we work together? But honestly, I didn't know anything about you, and I was kind of like worried about paying a lot of money to somebody that I didn't know, and I couldn't find anything about you on the internet. Like if you Google you, like we can't find anything about you. So then you were like, you connected me to somebody that you worked with in the past, actually two people, and I had calls with them. They were like, dude, you should start working with Rob. And I did, and it ended up being like one of my best decisions for 2018. So that's how we like got to work together. Do you want to share kind of like your story from a designer to where you are today?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because it really is. It was like a blind date. I remember I was in Sydney at the time, I think, when you sent me the first message. I was just there for a wedding. And I actually landed back in Lisbon, Portugal. And maybe an hour and a half later, I was back from the airport and on the phone with you. Like it was just like straight on the bat. And it's cool to hear it from your perspective as well, because that's kind of how it worked, right? I came across Craig years ago. We built this friendship, and then he started liking the stories I was sharing on Instagram. But the thing that's really interesting is about maybe a week or 2 weeks before he contacted me, not even, my profile used to be private. Like I'm a pretty private guy. I try not to get distracted by stuff. Like we were talking about earlier, the importance of controlling your environment, that kind of stuff. So it was really only 2 weeks earlier that I'd opened up my profile, and you just happened to come across me at this perfect time. If you'd come across me 2 weeks earlier, you would have seen this blank profile and been like, whatever. But the way I ended up getting to where I am now is back when I was in school, I did graphic design and art. And so the next natural step after winning a couple of prizes was that I should go and do a visual communications degree. So I did that at the University of Western Sydney. It was a 4-year degree. I had ups and downs, of course, but what I realized as I was going through that degree was while I was okay at design, I was never going to be one of the greats. I really noticed this from seeing my friends who they were passionate and they cared and they loved the art of it. And, I kind of stuck with it because that's what you do. But then after a couple more years of working in advertising and doing freelance and things like that, I just realized that it's not my special skill. I don't care about it in the way other people do. What I was really driven by was the business side. Like, I had a background in sales and marketing as it was, and I would focus more on the getting clients, closing clients, delivering to clients next than I really, to be honest, cared about doing great design. And while all my clients benefited, I always made sure that anyone who gave me money would be very happy. And I'd back it up with conversion stats, or I'd back it up with sales stats. I also recognized that in the long term, it wasn't going to work for me. So I started driving more down the business angle. I ended up doing marketing consulting for industry bodies, everything from IDEA Australia, which is the Imaging Digital Entertainment Association, CrossFit boxes, where I helped them add millions to their bottom line. And then I started working with online businesses, and it just kept on going. And the further along I got, the more I realized that my background in design and visual communication helped me be a more effective presenter of information and ideas. It helped me. I did a lot of speaking for a while, but it also helped me in terms of thinking things through. So the skills that I learned in design helped me translate ideas into the business world in a very simplistic and direct way, even though there was a lot of thinking behind it. I think that really helped a lot of my clients and businesses that I later owned get great results.
That's awesome.
That's
So, and how did you get to like do coaching, like business coaching? How did you get to that?
Yeah, sure. So it started a few years ago. I was invited to be on a podcast back in 2013. So I'd done a few in 2012. And I went on one in 2013 that actually focused on marketing consultants. And after the podcast went live, I got a couple of emails from different people saying, hey, like, do you have a program? Do you coach people? And I was like, oh, no, but if you're all asking, I'm sure we can figure something out.
Did you ever had a business coach before? Like, did you at that point?
I'd worked with mentors, but I'd never worked directly with a business coach.
Okay.
So I did have some experience in business that I built when I was smaller, or younger, I should say. I worked with kids with attention deficit disorder and their families. So I had experience in coaching in and of itself, and working directly with people on the emotional, psychological side. And somewhat through the consulting I'd done, a lot of the time I realized that most business problems are people problems. Most people know what to do, they're just not doing it because of something up here. So I had some experience in delivering on it. It was just I'd never done it on a business basis. But as people started to come out of the woodwork, they were like, yeah, like, we want this advice, we want this attention, we want this help, we want this accountability, these insights. And so, I did a little bit of it. You just kind of like put my toes in the water. And at the same time, I always wanted to make sure that there are a lot of people out there who have a lot of theory. They've got all this wonderful thinking. It sounds so good on paper, but they've never applied it to their own life. And something I wanted to make sure is that I never lost touch with eating what I kill. So by keeping my foot in the business arena, owning businesses or having stakes in businesses or profit shares or whatever it might be, it ensured that no matter what happened, I always had real world tangible knowledge. And then just over the course of from those first emails in 2013, I'd be very selective about who I worked with because I didn't need the money. I had businesses. And then over time, more people start talking, and then someone else hits you up and says, hey, I heard what you did for so-and-so. Can you help me? Oh, I heard that podcast that you did, and you mentioned this story, and then I spoke to that person. Hey, can you help me? And just over time, the value went up, the prices went up, the size of the companies went up, and just went on from there. Once the train started to leave the station, it definitely wasn't stopping.
Crazy. Great, man. So I think, so we started working, I don't remember how many months ago. It was like over 6 months or like in middle. So
yeah, it was like June, July,
right?
Year.
So it's like 9 months maybe for now. And I think for me, It was like really like, as I said, it helped me tremendously. And we'll talk about how in a few minutes, but I want to hear like from your perspective now, like looking outside, like, what do you think, if you're trying to look right now at like the last 9 months or so for me, what do you think that I struggled with? Like, just to give context, when I reached out to you, I still had Prospero as a business. And the main reason was that I wanted to scale that one up. That's what I thought I need help with, and kind of like leverage my consulting business. So try to automate it or make it more efficient. Now, like 9 months later, I'm totally owning a totally different business. So how do you see that? Like, what was I struggling with from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. So it's really interesting, Prospero, because that was such a distant part of our work together now. It's just not where my head's at. But when we first spoke, you really wanted to scale Prospero, and I think part of that was that there's that dream, that hope that you can build this thing. And we've all made this mistake is we come up with an idea and say, this is the thing I'm going to scale. But what you were really stuck on was that was not the thing that was going to scale. Like you look at the results you're going to Prospero versus what you've got with the Webflow Masterclass, worlds apart. And I think that was probably the number one thing that we were struggling is you needed someone with outside eyes who understood where you were, who understood the unique position that you were straddling, and who could sit down with you and talk with you honestly and say, hey, listen, like, here's what's working, here's not what's not. And at the same time, let's talk about and let's think about what's actually happening and why are we in this scenario. The other thing was, as we talked on today, was time. How do you prioritize your time? How do you make sure your time is effective? So when we started using the tools, for example, of effective hourly rate for each of the divisions essentially of your life and your business, that made life a lot easier, made it easy to decide, hey, is this thing good? Because if we talked about, hey, release product X and it'll be equivalent to Y dollars per hour, that might sound terrible until you go, yeah, but there's actually not a lot of work involved and I only have to do that twice and that cash flows everything else. Okay, cool, let's do it. So I think those were the things that you probably struggled with a little bit was you hadn't had the outside eyes to help you reflect the realities of things, but then also the structures and frameworks to take what you're great at, your gifts of design and design thinking and creativity, and channel them to where they'll be far more profitable, lucrative, and enjoyable.
Yeah, it should be said that actually before we started working together, I did not track, like I did have general tracking of my income, but I did not track time at all, like on an hourly base. I could not attribute like the results to where my efforts were. And I think a lot of like what you made me do is like track everything just so we can discuss it. Just even before we talked, like it was already eye-opening just to see this and kind of document every day what I'm struggling with. Do you want to share some of the kind of like the structures of how we work together, or what you found helpful in these scenarios?
Yeah, sure. So there's basically the core of everything I do with clients, and you know this as well, it's the feedback loop. And the feedback loop is you got to get data and then you got to look at the data and make a decision about what to do next, and then repeat the cycle. And when we started working together, like you said, you weren't tracking your time. You didn't know where the actual data, the results came from. So the first thing we had to do was lay it all out, find out what are you doing that makes money? What are you doing that's just burning you and stressful? And what are you doing that's in between? And then once we had that, we could start reviewing it. So the feedback loops that you and I use, we have the underlying daily feedback loop, which I think it's the key because it forces you to look at every day, what progress did you make on those specific goals we've set? What did you do well, which I think is a huge psychological win because sometimes you have bad days where you made progress, but finding that really is useful.
It's true. Like many days I actually struggle to say that. I was like, I didn't do anything really well today.
Yeah. Now, and that's actually like, it's a good little tangent is there are times in your life where you do feel that way. But if you do that for 14, 21, 60 days in a row, you're going to feel miserable. But the truth is there's always something in there that you did do well. And I can feel it because you do this at the end of the day, you're exhausted. You're like, oh, everything sucks. But by finding that win, you actually build that psychological benefit, I guess, to continue doing the cycle, that psychological drive. But yeah, so once we did that, we've got what did you do? What progress did you make? What did you do well? Then we've got, where are you stuck? Where are you challenged? What might you do to change that? And then finally, how is tomorrow going to be better? Again, priming you to have a good day. And the base of that feedback loop really is getting you to look at not just the objective side of things, but also having you go through this review and response process, which is I'm huge on. I learned it from a mentor of mine, and it was a game changer because you review what happened and then you respond to that data. Again, it's the feedback loop. And I think that designers in particular, because there is so much, it's not an industrialized process, right? You have to sit there and you have to think on ideas and you have to go for a swim and you have to let things kind of gestate in your head or marinate in your head before you come up with that idea, that breakthrough. And it's not predictable. But at the same time, we can look at the things that don't contribute to it at all. We can look at the things that do help. For example, if you're the kind of person who, you and I have talked about this a bunch, going for a swim is helpful, then you should go for more swims. If you go back and look through your daily feedback loop and go, oh my God, out of the last 5 good ideas I've had, 4 of them happened at the beach, you should probably go to the beach more often. So I think that feedback loop has been really critical in the way that we work together, but then making sure that feedback loop is aligned to a goal, right? So, with Webflow Masterclass, we set goals. With the consultancy, we've set goals. And even with Prospero, we set goals because that way you're always working towards a hypothesis or a theory or an outcome and knowing, am I going forwards or am I failing? And if you're failing, it's not actually about you. It's just the decision you've made and the action you've taken isn't in the right direction. Okay, let's change course and start making progress again. So that's how I would say we've worked together. And to me, it's the heartbeat of our relationship. Would that make sense to you as well?
Yeah, I know that at the beginning, like, and you gave me this feedback as well. Like at the beginning, I would just like kind of document, just like really short bullet points. I did this and this and this. And as time moved along, when I got into the habit, because I really wasn't like, for me, it was a hassle to take another 30 minutes every day just to do this thing. But once I got into the habit and I actually started to elaborate there, because I became much more aware of what's going on and what really happened. And as I was writing this, like this happened today, and this made me feel this way because I'm worried about this. So I actually started to write really longer documents where at some point you actually told me, hey, look, I just want to mention that look how much better you are documenting at this point. And that really helped me to, because one of the cycles, I don't know if you've mentioned it, but like I document every day. And then at the end of the week, I do a weekly review, which I just did. So I just go over what I documented every single day. And then I get a perspective of my whole week. And because I do this every week, I can go to last week and see what I've planned for this week and actually did I achieve what was supposed to happen this week. So it ended up as being such a valuable asset, just having all of this basically documentation. Then we talk about this. So like I think that you can do it on your own, like document it, and it will be helpful. But the fact that you give me feedback sometimes on a daily basis, especially when I'm struggling with something, and really help me to react better in this kind of like review response cycle that you were talking about. I feel like this is like key element in improving yourself and your business in general. So yeah, I think this is
that's a good point. Like the feedback side as well is obviously the daily reporting is helpful, but I'm just thinking a couple of the conversations where we've had, you're saying, hey, I'm going to say this thing. It's like, whoa, don't say this thing. That's probably going to not be great. Try this thing. Or, hey, here's this habit that's come up about 4 or 5 times, this little cycle in 9 months. Let's be aware of that. You don't want to go down this path again. And it's helpful because, look, we're all really great liars. We all lie to ourselves. I have a coach. I work with Craig Ballantyne. He keeps me honest every week. I have a phone call every second week with 2 other guys who basically beat me up psychologically if I'm not consistent. And the real benefit from these things is that when you have someone who A, cares about you and is in your corner, B, understands what you're trying to do, your industry or your commercial goals, whatever it is, and then C, is paying attention, they pick up these habits and patterns that are so invisible to you, or you could just mentally judo away and be like, oh, it's just a bad week, don't worry about it. But they say, hang on, like, you've done this a bunch of times. This happens all the time, and that's not a problem. But we know it doesn't work. So let's take a step back. Let's do what you want to do. Let's drive you towards where you're going. I think that's the other part that's really helpful with that daily feedback or those weekly reviews.
Can you share like what led you to the understanding that you also need to work with a business coach?
Yeah, it's the outside eyes. It really is. That I think because I spent so much time studying marketing and sales, I learned that this is where we go a little bit philosophical, right? There is no us, there is no you, there is no me. We are a product of our environment and our triggers and our trauma and our psychology and all these different things that trigger us in better or worse ways. And when we are observing our own experience, this is kind of like the Buddhist thing is, the subject and the object cannot be the same thing. Now, in Buddhism, that's about the seat of the self, but in reality, it means you're really good at lying to yourself, really good at just, whitewashing the bad things, making the good things look better, and a bit of cognitive dissonance. But when you have someone who's observing you from an outside perspective, they're not as emotionally engaged with the situation as you are. So I got an email a few years ago from Craig Ballantyne. I was telling him about a turnaround I was doing. He just said, listen, you've been grinding uphill on this for longer than you should have been. Kill it. It's not working. And you're going to look back at this one day and wonder, why did I work so hard on this for so long? And he was absolutely right. But I would never have been able to come to that conclusion emotionally because I was so invested. Never would have been able to do it. And Craig's not the first coach I've worked with. I've worked with a fair few of them now. And it's always the same thing, the outside eyes. What I found is I guess you'd say the biggest lever the coach has is how much they care about you. right? Because there's the knowledge, and they've got to have the skills, the knowledge, the understanding, the models, all this stuff. But if they care about you, they will be much better at communicating messages to you that will go into your head and you'll respond to. And that can produce change.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you say this because before I was working with you, I was working with a different coach who was, I feel like, more on what you said, like more theoretical level. So he wasn't really a business owner, and he was really good at thinking about stuff. But and again, I went to him to try to discuss how we can make Prospero scale and win with Prospero. I guess he was trying to tell me back in the day, like, this is not working. You should move away from it. And even tell me, like, your core competency is teaching people. Maybe you should do that. But I didn't listen to him. And,
Yeah.
when I came to the realization that I need to move away from Prospero, like, one of the things that I was thinking about later on was, why did it took me so long? Or, like, I think I even asked you, like, why didn't you tell me this months ago? And I think, like, I was not at the position of really being able to listen before maybe I can really trust you or feel like what I'm going through and how much this is important to me. Only then I could really kind of internalize and act on this advice. Before it was just like, nah, they don't get it. Like,
It's the cognitive dissonance, right? It's like, no one understands me as well as I understand me. But it's true. Like, a lot of the coaching relationships I have, some of them have been going for years because, I go in and I make someone a bunch of money and they're very happy. But that's really not the big thing, right? Like, it makes you feel good. But what the real big win for these people is that they have someone who understands their situation. So I have one client who I work with. He has done a couple of years with me, and then he'll do like 6 months off, 6 months on, kind of thing. And I understand his family. I understand his background. I understand his industry. I understand so much about him. And I really want to see him succeed. So if I give him advice today, he'll just follow it no matter what I tell him, because he knows, A, it works, but B, I care. I care enough about him and his family and what he's going through. But when you first start working with a coach, and this is something I think a lot of people struggle with, is they expect immediate magic overnight. Now, the coach can give you some quick wins, and a good coach will find easy ones. For example, go track your hours, go track how much money it made you. Let's have a look at it. Very easy win. But then on the more psychological stuff like Prospero, like, how that ended was great. But we had to get to a point in our relationship where you would listen to me on those sort of things. And I had to prove to you, and this is my responsibility, that I actually know what I'm talking about. And we put in a couple of quick wins, things that could help. But after we ran them for a bit, we said, oh, well, let's shift tack. I think that's a really key part in understanding that if you do work with a coach, you have to understand it's not immediate, right? You're just not going to plug in and know each other. In the same way that you have to learn to trust your coach has to learn about you so they can trust you.
yeah.
Two-way
One
street.
of the things I like about you is that you recommend really good books to me. So one of them was The Road Less Stupid by
Great book.
your favorite author. I forgot his name. Cunningham something.
Keith Cunningham.
Yeah, Keith Cunningham. Anyway, he's talking about a lot of things, and this is a really recommended book if you want to read it. But he was talking about, like, the 4 hats that you have to wear as a business owner, or the functions that a business needs. So let me see if I can remember all of them. One of them is like the creator, the person that actually does the work. One of them is like operation. Then there's maybe management or vision. And then there's board. And board is like getting external advice on your thinking, because as one person who thinks about things, you're only in your head, and maybe you're making a mistake because you're not seeing something, or it's in your blind zone, and you have to have people, like outside people, who are telling you if you're making a mistake. Now, I think that, at least for me as a business owner, like a freelancer or somebody that works alone, I lacked this outside perspective for a lot of time. Like, initially on the New School and Prospero, I had partners, but I don't think it was the same, and especially in my like business and my consultancy business, I didn't have anyone else to share my thinking, my struggles, and like my strategic plans. And that's like, I didn't realize, because I didn't even know the concept of board back at the time. But now that I read this book, I understand it, I can see that maybe if you are a CEO of a big company and you actually have like a proper board, then it's okay. But if you're a one person, especially running like a freelance business, that board is most times, I think, it's a business coach or something like that. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the roles were, artist, operator, executive, and board of directors, I think is what it is. Um, and the thing about, investor, artist, operator, investor,
Right.
board of directors. But the thing really is, especially for creatives, is the myth of the creative, right? Unstructured, brains all over the place, doesn't know what's going on. And people use this kind of mental framework to, some people use this as an excuse, some people don't know better. And then there's this other side of it where you can consume so much business content today from anyone. And a lot of those people who talk about it don't have any experience. In my favorite go-to example for this is all the people posting about MLMs on the internet, right? Like, yeah, I'm going to be a boss babe. I'm going to be a hustler. Hey, come join my amazing company. It's fast growing. But they just don't actually understand the basics of P&L. But they have this really sexy dopamine-driven kind of messaging. So people start following them, start taking business advice. You've seen all those weird little Instagram accounts where people put up icons that take complex ideas and simplify them to a stupidly dumb level. And this becomes your board of directors subconsciously. This is how we make our decisions because we're consuming the information, we're responding to it. And because we haven't got the structure, the operator, the investor, the board of directors, we're coming from that artist space as a designer, we start making really bad decisions. And we don't even realize it because, again, we haven't got the external reflection. Something that I don't even know what it was that you said, but it's around the board of directors stuff. My first quote unquote board of directors was my Muay Thai trainer. Right? I would happily say that Steve Ginnane from Bulldog Gym, used to be in Balmain, but it's now moved up to Brisbane. He is one of my favorite people on the planet. And it was back years ago now. And I had started consulting. I had a little bit of success, and we would meet every Wednesday morning for a 7 a.m. private class. And I so clearly remember him and I talking, and he was saying to me, how's the business going, in between rounds of training? And I tell him about the contracts and the proposals and the things I'd set out. I was like, yeah, so there's about, 5 figures worth of this and 5 figures worth of that. And he's like, yeah, but the money's not in the bank. It doesn't count. And it was so obvious. It was so common sense, but he was right. Now, I was lucky in that this was before Instagram was a big thing. There was less business advice on the internet. But having someone push back on my thinking really made me go, oh, yeah, he's right. And so I actually started doing something that I'd done years ago when I'd been in sales, was I started tracking every single day how much money I actually made cash in the bank, how many conversations I had, how many proposals, how many leads, every single day. Because that way I knew, and it was informal, but if I showed up the following Wednesday and he said to me, how much money did you make, how many contracts, whatever, as part of our conversation, I'd be able to say, well, funny you mentioned that, last week I did X. Now, at the same time, the reason that Steve and I had this relationship was I was consulting to Steve. We'd just done a trade where I would help him grow his business with his email marketing, his website, stuff like that. It was one of the last design jobs I did. But it worked out to be a really great experience of what you're saying in the board of directors, someone challenging you in your thinking and reflecting back at you.
Man, I've been freelancing for so long without this that I just think, oh my God, if I had this, like some people are lucky to just have this or have, I don't know, a dad who's a business person or whatever, or find this kind of a mentor, business mentor, like randomly. But I just never had anything to do with that. And I was kind of lacking any financial business sales kind of framework to think about. So totally came to like the design freelance from the thinking where you mentioned before, like I'm a creative, I'll just do it. Like clients will just find me. One of the things that we did when we started talking about like my consultancy is like you were asking me like, so how many leads do you get per month? And I was like, I don't know. Like sometimes people email me. I don't know how many per month. I don't keep track of that. And it's like today I think like how silly can you be? But I honestly believe that maybe 95% of designers would never track, like don't even know what CRM means, like and are definitely not tracking that, have no idea what their like proposal conversion rate is, because they're not even tracking the numbers. And it's pretty simple, if you have a simple freelance business, you don't even need a CRM for that. You can use like Google Docs. But most people just don't do it.
That's a really good point as well. And this kind of goes into the bigger conversation of, if you're a designer, you want to do great work. That's the fundamental thing, right? You want to be able to create beautiful products and beautiful experiences that help companies reach their strategic objectives, that help customers have a great experience, but also puts a bunch of money in your pocket. I think every designer would agree with that. And they also would say that I only want to get money from companies I believe with and align with. The thing is, if you don't have a structure, you're going to get stuck doing jobs you hate with people you don't like on products that you don't believe in because you need the money. But if you take, realistically, what is it, like 10 minutes a day or something, 5 minutes a day to track just numbers, like how many people did I talk to, how many leads have I got, how many proposals have I sent, how many of them closed, what's it worth, 5-10 minutes a day, it gives you the mindful awareness, I guess you'd say, and also empowers you to make better decisions. Because if you go, ooh, I haven't got any new leads coming in, then you can say, well, what am I doing to get new leads? That way you don't have to scavenge.
That's where I think like are the limits of, I think as a designer, doing it on your own is painful because you really quickly come to the realization of I'm not doing enough activities that generate leads. But
Yep.
I hate doing the activities that generate leads because that's not design related work. And so I don't want to do this. It's not fun. And that
Yep.
and that's where the plan crashes. If you don't have somebody who's like pushing you and telling you, dude, if you don't do this, you're not going to hit your goals. You're not going to have, again, one of the problems that I had in my consultancy when we get started, that it was very much like uncertain. I couldn't like say on a certain level how much money I'll make next month or how many clients I'll have next month because it wasn't kind of systemized. One of the ways to reduce that stress is to create those systems and to track those numbers. But if you would not tell me to do those things which are not fun to do, and honestly, if I wasn't paying you enough money to feel stupid not to do what you're telling me to do, I think like that creates the pressure to do things which are maybe outside your comfort zone.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well. Is yes, you can go and design these systems on your own and do them all. It always works better when you pay someone a significant amount of money because you are more serious. Those who pay attention. I do it, you do it. It's human. But the other part of it, I think, is when you have these structures, right? These review, these response structures, these reporting, these thinking structures, all these things, it takes away a lot of stress because you're no longer living in this state of uncertainty. You have a lot more control and predictability around your business, whether that's for growth or if you don't want to grow, you can keep it stable, or if you can want to earn more dollars per hour and still work the same amount, whatever. But having that outside set of eyes that says, hey, I know you want the dopamine hit of doing the beautiful designs, but if you want to keep doing the beautiful designs, let's go get some clients. Let's go get some leads. Let's go do those things. And honestly, this is one of those little simple things that with clients in multiple industries, I've always found is getting them to forcing themselves to do a daily report on calls, closes, proposals, whatever, how much. Because they're accountable to someone and because they're doing it, they get more relaxed because they make more money and they're happier and it's predictable and it doesn't become a big, ugly, scary thing anymore. It's like going to the gym. You do it every day, you get stronger, it gets easier, so on.
Yeah. I think it's still, even though like I'm aware of this and you're aware of this, it's still a problem.
Yeah.
Like even now with the Webflow Masterclass, there are still things which I find boring and I don't want to do them. And I'm like thinking, how can I avoid ever doing them? And you're telling me a lot of times, dude, do the boring work. Don't be like sometimes you need to like get your hands dirty and do the boring work don't try to outsource everything. Just do it. It needs to be done. Do it and then continue. Work is not always going to be like 100% fun. It's like you're running a business here.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I realized a while ago that part of my business endeavors had been for entertainment. It was something I had never picked up on, but I was like, oh my God, part of the reason I invested in or worked with certain companies wasn't for the financial return. It was for enjoyment and fun. So I just started scheduling fun and enjoyment and entertainment on my calendar. And wow, all of a sudden, I make less of those mistakes. Now, I will also tell you on the weeks that I do not follow my Sunday morning weekly planning process and I forget to put in entertainment and all that stuff, I catch myself going off the rails. And I have to go back and go, oh, okay, calendar, what are we doing? Where's the fun? Where's the engagement? Because the boring stuff in business is what makes money. It's not about, this is going to be controversial to say, especially in today's economy, in today's world, where it's all about, hey, do what you love and all this stuff, is do the work to make money, right? Like that's the financial savviness, get assets, get cash flow, do those things. And understand that a lot of what you can do to outlast your competition is do the boring stuff. Because if no one wants to do the spreadsheet tracking, if no one wants to manage their financials, no one wants to manage their sales cycle, they'll die if you manage it, you're left. And all of a sudden you have this 10-year career where everyone else burnt out after 2-3 years. And then it's a 20-year career, 40-year career. And it's just such an easy win that anyone can do if they get the right help.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like, yeah, we talk about this a lot, like the boring stuff or why you do things because you're passionate about them. And I think one more thing that is like to make that point stronger. I don't remember if it was like Seth Godin or somebody who said this, like some things are boring, but once you start seeing the success that is being created because of those boring things, you don't find them boring anymore. Or you start to like, people think that you need to be passionate about something and then do it and then it will be successful, but sometimes it's the other way around. You do something because it becomes successful, you become more passionate about it. Yeah, and I know that like to be completely honest about the Webflow Masterclass, I wasn't so passionate about it going in. It was just like an experiment. It was like, well, let me give it a go. It wasn't like my big vision, but seeing like the success of this, seeing how many people like their life were impacted, like it was transformational for them, having all these students thanking me and telling me how great it is. I'm like, oh my God, there's something here. Now I want to do the best out of this. Now the passion comes and you want to like crash it.
Yeah, well, it's like what we were saying before. It's the feedback loop. You've gone and done this thing uncertain what it will get you in terms of results. And that's the boring part. I don't know what this will do. But then you get those first few sales and you're like, ooh. Or you get those first few testimonials. Ooh. Or you get those first few people saying, oh my God, I've just gone from basically being at minimum wage and poor and broke and I hate my life and everything sucked. And then I found your course and all of a sudden, I'm happy, I'm dating, I've got money, I'm not stressed. And you go, wow. Like there was a guy who actually found me through stories of yours actually where you mentioned me. And he was selling a UX course, a UX copy course. And we didn't end up working together. He needs to get a little more revenue coming into his business before he's in a place where he can quite simply benefit from working with me and afford it. It's one of the great ironies of this stuff, right? You've got to pay enough to make it worthwhile, but you also have to find someone who you can afford. It's a catch.
It's true. Yeah, it's catch.
But he sat down. It's a catch-22. But he sat down with me and we had a quick phone call. And I said to him, listen, I reckon there's a lot of money buried in your business. Like I can see it from the outset. Go do these few things. And in, I think it was about a week, the volume of sales that he'd done on this micro copy UX course had just gone through the roof. And he wasn't doing fun things. He wasn't doing the sexy things that everyone wants to talk about and read about. He wasn't building a community or crafting a sexy message. He was contacting people and asking for the sale. That was it. Gave him a couple of copy and paste templates that he could literally send to people who'd been somewhat interested and say, hi, the doors are closing in a couple of days. Would you like to get in? Here's the price. After this, it will go up. Or after this, the doors are shut, or whatever it is. And by doing the thing that made him so uncomfortable and was quite boring, which was asking for the sale, he made a bunch of money. That's the thing. And now as a result, because he's made a bunch of money, he's got the positive feedback, he'll want to do it again and again and again. And that's how it starts. You have to go into it with the faith that the hard work will be worthwhile.
Yeah. Let's talk about this kind of like catch-22 thing where, as you said, it's like sometimes you like, I don't know if it's like the sentence is you got to pay money to make money, but it's like, I think that like, I would not be where I am today if I did not like work with you or do some other investments. But then again, I could have not made these investments. Maybe, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I had less money. I wouldn't be making these investments. So like, how do you break out of this like cycle?
Sure. Okay. So I'll give you a couple of stories to kind of paint this all together. Years and years and years ago, I had one of those online courses. Was about marketing consulting. And I got an email from a guy called Dan Meredith, who's gone on to be an absolute machine in the marketing world. And he sent me an email. He basically said, listen, I get that you're probably very busy. I would like to buy 1 hour of your time. Is that possible? How much? Just let me know how much it is. Like, I'm a gym owner transitioning into marketing consulting. I would like to buy an hour of your time because I want to basically have a better life. And he was so clear and direct in his request of asking to buy an hour of my time. And only 1 hour. He wasn't looking to work with me long term. He didn't feel like he was in the financial position to do so. But he knew that if he paid, he would pay attention. And he knew that if he worked with me, took my advice and applied it, he'd be in a position where he could pay me for another call in the future. And Dan and I have gone on to build a really great relationship. He found the sacrifice that he was capable of making, the one that made him uncomfortable, and then went and bought it and did it. Now, Dan's gone on, as I said, to have a fantastic career and a fantastic business. He paid what he could. Secondary to that is I have done the same thing with mentors of mine. Now, sometimes though, you don't pay in cash, you pay in time, you pay in resources, you pay in network connections. You give what you can, what you have to sacrifice to make their life better, and they'll make your life better. And then the final part of it is, look, the question everyone asks is like, how do you know you've got an ROI? How do you know that this coaching is worthwhile? Now, for someone like you, we can very clearly say, well, here's the dollars before, here's the huge amount of dollars after. It's a no-brainer. But other people, it's a little harder for them to imagine because maybe they've never made that much money. Maybe they've never had someone they know make that much money. So when it comes down to that position, it's like, how do you know? Well, for me, it comes down to three things. Is one, the person you're working with should have the experience and be able to drive sales. That's the first thing. Second thing is, they should be the kind of person who's like, I will only work with you if I can make you money. And if you're not happy, you can have all your money back. Like I said that to you. If you do this and you don't like it, if it sucks, if you're not making money, just tell me, I'll give you your money back. That's fine. And I think that there's a real key part of that because that is the mentality of eat what you kill. And so that way it reduces the risk if you're looking for someone to invest in. And finally, as you said, you have to pay attention. And that goes back to what Dan did. He paid the amount of money that made him pay attention. Now, you might be starting out as a designer if you're listening to this and wondering, how do I get started? And maybe, $500 is a lot of money to you. And that might be all you can afford. So you might contact someone and say, hey, listen, I really want to ask you 3 questions. I've got a very clear outline of my problem that I understand. How much do you cost per hour? And I would like to buy as much of that hour as possible, up to $500. That might be all you can do. And sometimes you'll find that the people you contact will say, great, here's the link, pay me the money, I'll jump on the phone with you. Other people say, listen, keep the money. I'll answer it over email for you. But it's about showing that you're serious. That's the only way I can really describe it. Yeah. I think psychologically as well, it tells you that you're serious too.
Yeah, good solid points. Awesome, Rob. Is there anything else that you want to tell designers who are like, especially freelance designers? Obviously, you know this, like struggling clients, managing their time and everything. Like, I think we had a lot of good tips on the show here, but anything else you want to mention?
Yeah, let's drive home a couple of quick things. If you're a freelance designer, right, at the end of the day, you did it because you wanted that freedom, that autonomy. And part of the reason you want that freedom or autonomy was to work on the projects you loved as opposed to having just things come down the pipeline from a project manager where you just had to grind through them. If you've made the decision to be a freelancer, you have a responsibility to yourself, the people in your family, the people in your network to do a great job. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to grind yourself down, work from 6 a.m. to midnight every night. But it does mean you have to take responsibility for the results that you're getting. And that doesn't mean that you have to be a gruff, angry, sad, miserable businessman, or businesswoman. It means that you just have to sit there and go, okay, well, what's the structure that's going to help me succeed? Now, we talked about a few of them to kind of recap it. Is what's your effective hourly rate per task that you do? So, excuse me, designing a website, that's the EHR of say $600. Speaking with clients, well, maybe that one's not a really high one. Maybe that's $50 now. But getting clear on what does bring in revenue and what doesn't is important because then you can adjust your schedule. So you have that autonomy and that freedom to do the things you love. The second thing is tracking. It's an expansion of the EHR. If you're a freelancer, you should definitely be tracking because I've met freelancers who are earning such little money per hour that because they've never stopped to look at it, they've been telling themselves they're living this fantasy world. They get to post photos of themselves working by the beach or hanging out at bars in the middle of the day, but they're stone cold broke because the dopamine and the serotonin running through their brain is distracting them from the fundamental reality that they're making less than minimum wage. Now, that doesn't mean that they're failures. It just means that they're operating within the wrong system. They're playing by the wrong rules. If you track, you see what rules you're playing by, and then you can change the rules you're playing by and make more money and have a happier lifestyle. I think the third thing is if you're a freelance designer, there's a big risk of you doing things in isolation. Maybe you go to a co-working space or maybe you work from home, but you slowly isolate yourself. And the fact is, yes, depression is related to creativity. Like there's a bunch of studies that show that, but depression really makes it hard for you to be financially successful unless you've got the right structures in place. So find yourself a coach, find yourself a community, find yourself people to connect with every single week on an entertainment and social level, as well as a business level, whichever way you want to do it, because that will give you the right environment to thrive and succeed in. And it's very, very simple. It sounds outrageous, but the people who make their environment align with their goals will always do better than the people who try to grind forward with discipline and hard work and all this stuff. Just make your life easier. do the things that work, and remove all the friction. So I think those would be the things I'd recap on for freelance designers.
Amazing, Rob. All right,
Awesome.
dude. Thank you so
That's
much. I
it.
think first of all, can you share like how people can find you on the
Yeah,
Instagrams or where else?
the Instagrams is always the best place to find me. That
I'll put the
is
links by the way on the show notes or wherever. But tell the
awesome.
people how to spell it.
Yeah, the handle is ROBHANLY. So no E, it's just ROBHANLY. And there you'll find, my Instagram I basically use in two ways. I post photos of nice parts of my life and things I care about and cherish memories. But then I just hammer it with stories and I save the best ones, the ones that I feel like resonate best. If you want to learn how to make more money from your business, if you want to learn how to think about business differently, if you want to find out weird ideas that I really like, watch the stories and vote on
Stories
the
are
polls because the polls are
guys,
my favorite
listen,
part.
I talk to Rob, like we have a weekly call and we talk almost daily on the doc, but I like a lot of the stories are things that we talk about. So if you can't afford a coach right now, follow the stories. It's incredible. It's like the exact frameworks that we work with. Super, super valuable. So check it out. It's incredible.
I love the stories,
Super
man. I get
valuable.
such a kick. I did one this morning and I just got such a kick out of doing it. And it was on numbers because I recognize that numbers are something people hate, but here's how you can learn to love them. And yeah, so if you're watching this, if you're listening to it, please come check out the stories and just see if you learn something because they're not boring. That's something I'll promise you is they're not boring stories.
Amazing. All right, dude.
Awesome.
Thank
All
you
right.
so
Thank you
much for
so much,
coming on the
brother.
show and sharing your wisdom. I will catch you
Always a
next
pleasure.
time.